Open your Bibles, please, to Ecclesiastes chapter 2. It's been 3 weeks since we started. And, since we last had a message from Ecclesiastes, I meant to say. And remember from chapter 2, Solomon tells us why he's writing the book. What's going on here? When he says in verse 3 of chapter 2, I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. He's looking for satisfaction. He's looking for fulfillment. He's looking for the good life for the sons of men under the sun. And he's tried everything and found it all to be vanity of vanities and vexation of spirit. We left off last time by listing off all the various things that Solomon had done, the possessions he had acquired, the experiences that he had had, only to find that it was all vanity and vexation of the spirit, or of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. He had every kind of advantage to conduct this experiment in trying to find out what was that good that the sons of men should do under the sun all the days of their life. And so we pick up in verse 12, where we left off from our study last time. And I would suggest you have your Bible open and you follow with me, because I'm going to read along and comment as I read. And so he says, and I turned myself to behold wisdom and madness and folly. So he'd already been considering this, so he's turning and he's given it another look. Considering it again, wisdom, madness, and folly, which he mentions in preceding verses, he had already given his heart to know. And so he says, For what can the man do that cometh after the king, even that which hath been already done? What else could anybody do? What else could anybody try to find that which is good for the sons of men that Solomon didn't? The man had every kind of advantage in order to conduct his experiment. And he came up with vanity of vanities and vexation of the spirit. But then he did derive this one conclusion from having considered and beheld wisdom and madness and folly. And that is in verse 13, Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as far as light excelleth darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceive that one event happeneth to them all. So he does admit from his experiment, having considered wisdom and madness and folly, that wisdom does excel folly. There's as big a difference as there is between the day and the night, between the light and the dark. And he states why this is so when he says the wise man's eyes are in his head. That's a funny statement. Where else would they be? The wise man's eyes are in his head. But that's just simply a way of saying that a wise man is able to see. That's the whole point. And we speak like that ourselves, if you think about it. For example, if you see somebody that's always being stupid, you say, he's got no brains. Or if you see somebody really smart, he's got brains. Well, everybody's got brains. It's just some people use them better than others. And so people that don't use them, you speak of them as though they did not have them at all. And so this is the idea. The wise man is a man that's got perception, a man that can see what's ahead of him and see how to plan and figure things out. And there's definitely an advantage to that. He says the wise man's eyes are in his head. Like I say, that's just a way of saying he's able to see. Let me give you a couple of verses that speak somewhat in the same vein, and you'll see why I'm explaining it this way. In Deuteronomy 29:4, the Lord hath not given you an heart to perceive, and eyes to see, and ears to hear unto this day. Now see, this is a situation that because they couldn't understand, God describes it as you don't have eyes to see. Whereas if you do understand, you could say you got eyes. See, he's got eyes in his head. See the point? Or another one would be Ezekiel 12:2. Ezekiel 12:2, to clarify the figure of speech that he's using here. In Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 2, Son of man, thou dwellest in the midst of a rebellious house, which have eyes to see and see not. What good are your eyes if you can't see? So that's Ezekiel 12:2. Ezekiel 12:2. Did I say something wrong? Okay, Ezekiel, call my hand on that, because I'm preaching from Ecclesiastes. So that means every reference we go to from this time till the end of the sermon is going to be from Ecclesiastes, unless you tell me otherwise. You got it? I don't know what that is. It just freezes in my brain, and that's that. I hate the problem as much as you hate it, but I don't know what to do to fix it, other than just bear with it. Son of man, thou dwellest in the midst of a rebellious house, which have eyes to see and see not. So you could say they don't have any eyes because they don't see. And so when a person does see, when a person is able to perceive and understand, then you would say a wise man's eyes are in his head. He's got eyes in his head. He's got brains in his head, you could say. But the fool walketh in darkness. So the bottom line is this, that at least the smart man, the wise man, can better chart the course of his life through this world instead of just blindly stumbling about like a stupid man. It does pay to have brains, and it does pay to use them. You'll get along better in this world if you do. So that much can be seen by just observing wisdom as it contrasts with madness and folly. But even for all of that, even if you've got the brains, you've got the smarts, and you can plan your life out better and have a better life in this world, yet the sad truth is, stated in verse 14, one event happeneth to them all, to the wise and to the fool, and this is the event. Then said I in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart that this also is vanity. For there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever, seeing that which now is in the days to come shall be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man? As the fool. So you're smart, you do well in life, you have a good life, and you end up like the guy that didn't because he was stupid. Dead. See? Whatever temporary advantages wisdom may bring you in this life, you're going to end up just like the fool. Dead. I want to compare that with Psalm 49. Psalm 49, which says some of the same stuff Solomon is saying in Ecclesiastes. Psalm 49, verses 10 through 13. For he seeth that wise men die. And they do. Smart people end up just like stupid people. For he seeth that wise men die. Likewise the fool and the brutish person, a brutish person is a stupid person, perish and leave their wealth to others. And Solomon's going to talk about that here in a minute. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. No matter what position of power, influence, fame you achieve, you're going to die. We all just die, just like everybody else. Wise, fool, honorable, dishonorable. Like the bee, nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. This their way is their folly, yet their posterity approveth their sayings. Selah. And then, not only is the wise man, no matter how smart he was, no matter how well he charted his life, going to end up dead just like a stupid guy, but whatever he achieves is going to be forgotten. And that's true. That's true. Whatever he achieves is going to be forgotten. I mean, how many of you this morning, or how many of you every day, you turn lights on and off, on and off, on and off? How often do you think of Thomas Edison when you do it? You might think of him when you go to Greenfield Village and spend a few minutes in his workshop. And probably, as time moves on, there'll be plenty of people out there that won't even remember he's the guy that invented the light. So, when you consider that everything whatever the wise man achieves is going to be forgotten, then the question arises, then what's the point? And that's why he said in his heart, this also is vanity. In the now, considering that even though he was wise, and wise he was, the wisest of all men, with the exception of Jesus Christ, who said, greater than Solomon is here. I don't think there's ever been a man apart from Jesus Christ, other than perhaps Adam before the fall, that had a higher IQ than Solomon. The man had tremendous intellectual, unfathomable to us, intellectual potential. But notice he collapses into what is a classic definition of depression. And he says, and I'm going to read verses 17 through 20, therefore I hated life, because the work that is wrought under the sun is grievous unto me, for all is vanity and vexation of the spirit. He saw work as being burdensome, and it is. It brought trouble and discomfort, and it does. And such will work bring. And he says it's all vanity and vexation of the spirit, and that's what work will bring you if it's all toil for nothing. Just vanity and vexation of the spirit, if in the end it was all for nothing. So this being the case, you work so hard, but for what? He hated life. Yeah, I hated all my labor. I hated life, and I hated everything I did. All my labor, which I had taken under the sun. Why? Because I should leave it unto a man that shall be after me. I accumulate, and in the end I got to leave it all. So, what's the point? And who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? I may be ever so wise and work and accumulate ever so much and leave it to somebody that's just going to squander it like a fool. And that's what fools do. Fools can't stand money in their hands. They got to spend. Saving is an ugly word in their vocabulary. And who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Yet shall he have rule over all my labor, wherein I labored, and wherein I showed myself wise under the sun. I mean, I did all this work. I accumulated all these possessions. I may have all these achievements, and I'm going to leave it to some fool who's going to squander it, and then what? Then you ask, what was it all for? He said, this is also vanity. So because of that, he hated life, because of the grievousness of labor. For what? And he hated his labor because he was going to leave it to perhaps a fool. And then he said, interesting word in verse 20, therefore I went about to cause my heart to despair of all the labor which I took under the sun. Very interesting statement there. So, considering that he would die as a fool, considering that all his wisdom would be forgotten in the days to come, Solomon became depressed. This is a classic definition of depression. When you hate life, you hate all your labor, and you cause your heart to despair. And to despair means to have no hope, to lose hope. You call that depression. That is depression. He described it as hating life, hating all his labor, and going about to cause his heart to despair. Now, I have a book that was written by Neil Anderson and Hal Baumchen. That would be the correct German pronunciation, Baumchen. I don't know how he pronounces, probably Baumchen or something like that. That's a bastardization of the beautiful German language. But they wrote this book called Overcoming Depression, Finding Hope Again. And they gave this definition of depression. If you've ever been depressed, you'll understand this definition. Depression is a disturbance or disorder of one's mood or emotional state. It is characterized by persistent sadness, heaviness, darkness, or feelings of emptiness. The emotional state of depression is usually accompanied by thoughts of hopelessness. See, there it is. I cause my heart to despair. By thoughts of hopelessness and sometimes suicide. Those who are depressed believe that life is bad, and Solomon seems to have come to that conclusion, and that the prognosis for improvement is nil. Their thoughts are colored by negative and pessimistic views of themselves, their future, and the circumstances surrounding them. Hopelessness. Nothing's ever going to get better. It's just all bad, heavy, dark. And a lot of Ecclesiastes is precisely that. Anybody that's read the book knows that a lot of it is a very depressing, bleak outlook, a dark outlook. But that's the conclusion he comes to when he analyzes life under the sun, bounded by birth and death, and nothing outside those boundaries. Now it's interesting that to look at this man who experienced this awful depression. It was Solomon. He was a man who had power, incredible wealth. He could afford anything. Intelligence, incredible IQ, and social status. He was king of Israel and admired and envied by kings from around the earth who would come to him and enrich him with gifts and inquire of his wisdom. And couple that with the fact that David, his father David, we're told in 1 Samuel 16:12, was ruddy and goodly to look to. He was handsome. And then his mother, Bathsheba, we're told in 2 Samuel 11:2, was beautiful to look upon. So when you consider his father was handsome and his mother was beautiful, odds are that Solomon, on top of everything else, was a looker. So here you got it all. You got the good looks, you've got the power, you've got the fame, the fortune, the wealth, the intelligence. You meet occasionally a person that's got it all. And yet here he is, depressed. Bottom line, no matter how well off anybody is in this world, nobody is immune to depression. You got it, people? None of us are. I've certainly experienced the pain of it, and I've preached to you about it. I've shared my experience with you. That's actually how I process things. When I have something I'm burdened with and I preach about it, it actually gives me relief. Maybe that's the whole idea. The Lord lets me go through that, so I will preach about it, and then you get help. And in the meantime, I'm helped as well. I've experienced that. So let it be. In fact, one time I preached a series out of my own experience of depression, and Greg Oley was so touched by it, he got up and said he hoped I'd stay depressed. With friends like that, who needs enemies? Jeez. Oh, well. So it goes. So anyway, we're all subject to it. But here's the thing that's interesting. Solomon said, I went about to cause my heart to despair. The little verbal expression to go about means to busy oneself about, to set to work upon, to take in hand. In other words, Solomon set out to make himself depressed. This wasn't a case of a man that lost hope. This was a case of a man who willingly gave it up. People do that. People do that. You know, sometimes, have you ever been depressed and you just wanted to be, leave me alone and let me be? Almost like I've earned the right to be. So just leave me and let me be. He went about to cause his heart to despair. He deliberately gave up hope of ever finding ultimate satisfaction in this world, which is good, if you think about it, if it leads to the pursuit of the ultimate satisfaction in God. So it makes sense, because that's where he's going to end up, showing us the ultimate satisfaction is in life as it relates to God, and especially to his judgment. And so Solomon goes on, as we say, I've already looked at this, cites the reason for his depression. He hated life because his work was troublesome and uncomfortable and vanity and vexation of the spirit, which is really about all it amounts to if all your toil is for nothing in the end. And that's what he's thinking. I worked for all this stuff and I die and leave it. To perhaps a fool. He hated his labor, because he should leave it to somebody that would come after him. Well, I mean, why work so wisely, so hard, day and night for a fool that does not know how to properly value and see what you attain by that work? I mean, how many times in history have inheritances gained by long, hard labor, day and night, been squandered by its heirs? I've seen it. I've seen a man work hard and leave his wife money, and in no time the wife and children have burned through it and she's declaring bankruptcy. I've seen it. Squander it. Like that. Solomon's seen that too. And he sees that possibility. of that happening to all that he had worked to attain. Indeed, as he says there in verse 21 at the end, this also is vanity and a great evil. For what hath man of all his labor, verse 22, and the vexation of his heart wherein he labored under the sun? For all his days are sorrows, and his travail grief. Yea, he taketh not rest in the night. This also is vanity. This is one of these guys, the workaholic. I mean, for him, fun is work. And he works, and he succeeds, and he acquires, he has an estate. But then he's going to die and leave it all, and who knows what's going to be done with it. Will it be appreciated? Will it be valued? Or will it be blown by a fool? And if you think of it like that, then what's the point of it all? Why? Why work to leave this great inheritance to somebody that won't be able to value it like you did? And so he comes to a conclusion in verse 24. There is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw, that it was from the hand of God. For who can eat, or who else can hasten hereunto more than I? And when you think about all his wealth, all his capacity, all his advantages, if there was anybody that could make his soul enjoy good in his labor, it would have been Solomon. Who could hasten to that end more than Solomon could? And so he decided that the best thing to do is just to enjoy what you have for now. There's no sense in toiling in grief and sorrow day and night, only to leave it to whomever to do whatever with. So practically, if you think about it in this context, it just makes sense to allow yourself to enjoy now what you work for. And that's a gift from God. He says right there, he says, I saw that this was from the hand of God. And that will compare nicely with 1 Timothy 6:17, written to the rich of this world. I don't believe people should just blow everything in wasteful spending and pleasures. Absolutely not. And a good man does leave an inheritance for his children's children. The Bible teaches that, so it should be an objective in our financial planning to see that those we leave behind are provided for. And yet not to the extent that you don't let yourself enjoy some of your money while you're here. It's a good idea. Let yourself enjoy some of your money. It just makes sense. And then we read in 1 Timothy 6:17, charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy. So it is from the hand of God when you can enjoy the fruits of your labor. It is a blessing. Like I say, no sense in toiling in all grief and sorrow to leave it from whomever and deprive yourself of any pleasure of what it is that you're doing and possessing. But again, this is strictly viewing life under the sun, remember? This is viewing life under the sun. Because you see, while it's fine to work and enjoy the fruits of your labor and eat and drink and enjoy what you earn, there are certainly better things to labor for in life than just present enjoyment. And that's what his conclusion is here in chapter 2. Nothing better than just enjoy it while you can. That's what he's essentially said. But again, that's viewing life under the sun in the context of the few years we live down here. But when you put it in the context of an afterlife, of life beyond the sun, más allá del sol, as the Spanish sing, then it is certainly better. There are certainly things to labor for in life beyond just present enjoyment, if life is lived in reference to what is beyond the sun, as two passages will make plain. Will make plain. Let me repeat that, because I dropped my voice, and I had people tell me when I drop my voice they don't hear what I say. So if you're one of these people that talks like this, and you're not going to be able to do very much good up here trying to preach to the people. So don't do that if you want to be called on. John chapter 6 and verse 27. 6:27. Jesus said, "Labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life." That's not what Solomon's talking about in our verse. But he talks about laboring for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you, for him hath God the Father sealed. In other words, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust doth not corrupt, and where thieves do not break through and steal. You see, what you're doing this morning, right now, isn't exactly making your investments increase in value or enlarging the size of your bank account. But you are adding to your account in heaven. You're laboring here for something beyond the sun, some greater something. You're looking for some greater reward than can be gained from what you do in the things of this life. You follow what I'm saying? And then we come to Isaiah 55, 2 and 3. Isaiah 55, 2 and 3. Laboring for a meat that doesn't perish, that endures to everlasting life. The eternal reward, the eternal gain that comes from the sacrifices we make in this life to do the will of God. Looking at something beyond just eating and drinking and enjoying the fruits of our labor in this life, which anybody can do. Even the wicked who will burn in hell can and do. In Isaiah 55, 2 and 3, "Wherefore do you spend money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which satisfieth not? Hearken diligently unto me, and eat ye that which is good, and let your soul delight itself in fatness. Incline your ear and come unto me." This is the call of Jesus. "And hear, and your soul shall live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, even the sure mercies of David." So there's something to work for, an end to work for, besides just present enjoyment. The present enjoyment is a gift of God. It's good as far as it goes, but it doesn't go very far. That's the point. And if you're looking there for ultimate satisfaction, you know what you're going to find? It's all vanity and vexation of the spirit. Because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You can enjoy the things you can do with your money, but there comes a day when age takes its toll and you can't enjoy it anymore. I mean, yes, you could take that wonderful trip to Colorado every year for a ski outing, but there's going to come a day you can't ski anymore. It will happen. It's coming to us all. And so if you're looking for that as the great end-all of life, you're in for a disappointment. That was the problem with my dear friend in Germany that died, that lived his last 2 years in literally crippling depression, because he could not accept the limitations that age had imposed upon him. Said he, "Ich war so lebensfreudig." I just enjoyed life so much. But now he couldn't like he did. But if he'd had that faith reference of something beyond the sun to nurture and nourish his soul in those last days, how much better it would have been. Because when he was in that depression, he said, "I don't see a way out." But for the believer that sees things beyond the sun, he sees a way out. You see, that puts whatever we do down here into perspective. In that book, The Message of Ecclesiastes, that I have been influenced by in my understanding of this book, and will quote or reference what it teaches from time to time, I have this quote by Derek Kidner. "For in themselves," talking about food and drink and work, "in themselves and rightly used, the basic things of life are sweet and good." And they are. Good food, good fellowship, good fun, good hobbies. The basic things of life are sweet and good. Food and drink and work are samples of them. What spoils them is our hunger to get out of them more than they can give. That's the problem. When you're trying to get more out of these basic things than they can give. What spoils them is our hunger to get out of them more than they can give, a symptom of the longing which differentiates us from the beast, but whose misdirection is the underlying theme of this book. See, what Solomon is doing in his experiment is to see how much you can extract from all these things of life to give life meaning and purpose, and he finds you can't find the ultimate satisfaction there. It's not there to be found. It's like I quoted the last time in that book that your ex-wife gave me about heaven, The Slumber of Christianity by Ted Decker. Tremendous book. I'm going to read this quote to you again. He said, when you understand that earthly pleasures are meant only as a foretaste of the indescribable pleasures that await us, your compulsion to overindulge is tempered by the realization that no particular pleasure can ultimately satisfy. You hear that? So whenever we eat and drink and enjoy the good of our labor, you got to think of it as just sips of water to satisfy your thirst along the race of life, but do not think of those sips as the everlasting fountain, for they are not. They're sips. They go so far and no further. And it's all in how you process what you enjoy in this life. If you're looking into that as your heaven, you're in for a big disappointment. But if you just see it as little foretastes of better things to come, then you have rightly processed it in the context of the Christian's hope. So Solomon in the last verse here draws a distinction between a good man and a sinner. And he says in verse 26, for God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he giveth travail. Well, if you women that have had babies and been in labor, the Bible calls that travail. So you have some idea what that means. God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he giveth travail, hard, laborious work, to gather and to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. This also is vanity and vexation of the spirit. He draws a distinction between what God gives to a good man and what he gives to a sinner. Now, to the good man, God gives, but see, to the good in his sight. I want you to get that prepositional phrase. Now, there's good in the sight of men, and there's good in the sight of God, and they are not always the same. You may have noted that I had a tag in my recent email. It was a quote from Aristotle that being a good man and being a good citizen are not always the same thing. Because you were a good citizen in atheistic, communistic Russia didn't necessarily mean you were a good man. Got that? That's very important to make that distinction. So this is good in God's sight. And to that man, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy. And this is indeed experienced in this life, wisdom, knowledge, and joy, by truly good people. Because God gives them this, wisdom, knowledge, and joy. And that's exactly what the book of Proverbs is all about. What God gives good people to enrich their life and make for them a better life in this world. He gives them wisdom to make better decisions, knowledge with which to make the decisions, and joy when they make them. That's it. So what we find here, and we will find from time to time in this gloomy book, so filled with the conclusion of vanity and vexation of the spirit, what we will find from time to time, and we see here, that amidst the general gloom of this book shines the hint that life in this world can be indeed satisfying and worthwhile, but more of that will come at the conclusion. It is possible. I mean, look, this man says here in this chapter, I hated life. Don't you see a big contrast between that and what we read in Psalm 34, he that will love life and see good days, do thus, thus, thus? Repeated and quoted in 1 Peter chapter 3. So it is possible that life can be an experience to love, not to hate. It all depends on your perspective, whether you're viewing it just under the sun, or you're viewing it más allá del sol, beyond the sun. So, However, even the good life, lived with wisdom and knowledge and joy by a good man, if that's all there is to it, is just 70 or 80 years down here, wise, knowledgeable, and enjoying your life, and then you die, pretty pitiful, isn't it? Especially for us as Christians who have devoted and geared our lives to an understanding that there's something beyond this life. Like I said, live every day of your life with the idea that that day and what you do in that day is going to come before God's review at the end. Live every day as though this were the day that Jesus would come and you would stand before Him. And let that define your goals, your mission, your purpose in life. Isn't that why we're here this morning? If Jesus did not die to take away human sin and did not rise again from the dead to show the success of His mission in the removal of sin and to give to sinners everlasting life, would we be here? Isn't that what this is all about? We are a gospel church. You know what that means? A church that believes the gospel. You know what the gospel is? The announcement of everlasting life, hope, salvation, deliverance. If there's none of that, what are we here for? It's just, really, think about it. What would we be here for? Well, we could just learn about how to make more money and how to manage it better and how to be healthier. There's all kind of seminars out there about that you could go to and sleep in this morning. Think about it. Sure. What do we need this for? What's this all about? It's the gospel. That's something, this is our window into something beyond the sun. Let me tell you what the Bible calls this church. You know what the Bible calls the house of God in Genesis 28? What Jacob said, he said, this is none other than the house of God, and listen to it, the gate of heaven. Listen, balmy beaches in Florida, green hillsides in Kentucky to ride horses on, the Eiffel Tower, the Wall of China, and all of these exotic places you can go and exciting things you can see. That is not the gate of heaven. This is. I hope you heard that, because it was meant to drive it home to all of you. You're never nearer your ultimate destination than when you are where you are right now. That's why this is called the kingdom of heaven. That's why it's called that. And when you get as old as I am, I'll probably get bruises from banging on the lectern like that. Okay, it's worth it. Sometimes you just got to drive it home to get it into people. See, here's the idea. All that you can gain in this life with the wisdom and knowledge and joy God gives you, if that's all there is to it, well, even that is vanity and vexation of spirit, because you're just going to die and leave it all. In fact, Paul puts it this way in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 19. If in this life only we have hope in Christ, we are of all men most miserable. And we are. I mean, to think of all think of all the money you would have now to blow for whatever if you weren't in a church giving part of it and paying me. Think about that. If there's no hope in Christ beyond this life, no afterlife, if the gospel is all just a pipe dream, a piece of fantasy, you've been spending all this time and all this money coming to church, coming to Bible study, giving, really? Well, okay, but that's about all it is. It just come for entertainment, and that's pretty pitiful. Especially when the entertainment makes you feel guilty. And so apart from something under the sun, even the best life you can live with wisdom is vanity and vexation of the spirit, bringing no ultimate, maybe some temporary, but no ultimate satisfaction. I had an uncle. He was Businessman, very successful. He a very successful businessman down in Tampa, Florida, had several tire companies, made his fortunes that way. Was a wealthy man. He was a philanthropist and was actually named Man of the Year in Florida. The then Governor Bush, I think it was Jeb Bush down in Florida, came to this event. When he died, they actually had to rent the fairgrounds for the crowd that came to his funeral, and it even made the local news when he died. But my mother remembers him one time pointing to his estate, where he had a large acreage and horses. He was very into that. You know, that's one of the pleasures of the rich. And it is the pleasures of the rich. And he says, "This is my heaven." Oh, my God. Isn't that pitiful? I didn't care anything about God, church, serving God. Vanity of vanities, vexation of the spirit. Pitiful. But then to the sinner. As for God giveth to man that is good in his sight, wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he giveth travail, to gather and to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. The sinner works so hard to amass wealth. There's so many of them in this world like that work and work and work to amass wealth, because he seeks to find his ultimate satisfaction there. But what does he amass it for? That he may give to him that is good before God. Let me give you 3 verses along that line. Think about it with me. In Job 27, come over to Job 27. Verses 16 and 17. Talk about the wicked. Though we heap up silver as dust. Man. Oh, I could say so many things about that. Though we heap up silver as dust, and boy, we do heap up dust, and prepare raiment as the clay, he may prepare it, but the just shall put it on, and the innocent shall divide the silver. It's interesting. He amasses that he may give to him that is good before God. And then in Proverbs 13:22. 13:22. A good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. And then Proverbs 28 and verse 8. He that by usury and unjust gain increaseth his substance, he shall gather it for him that will pity the poor. So it's interesting to think about this. How many things are there in this world that good people enjoy that were originally acquired by the wicked? Just let your imagination run. Good things that you enjoy now that were originally acquired by the wicked. That was my next example. And you're not looking at the outline. Smart, Kevin, smart. That's good. The land of Canaan was settled and cultivated by wicked. And when I say wicked, I mean wicked heathen, only to be given to Abraham's promised seed. Classic example. Because you see, and I've taught you this before, and it might sound egotistical, and it's not meant to sound that way. I'm just telling you Bible. This world actually, and everything in it, belongs to God's children. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, 21 through 23, Paul wrote, "Therefore let no man glory in men, for all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas." And let me just add to the list of preachers, Ben Mott, I belong to you. Yeah, but you belong to me too, so it's an even exchange. Or the world, or life, or death, or things present, or things to come, all are yours. And ye are Christ's, and Christ is God's. In reality, this world and its riches belong to God's elect, those who belong to Christ, and the wicked are squatters on an inheritance that is ours. That's what this verse is teaching us, people. And the reason God bears with wicked men in this world is He uses them to hold society together for the good of His elect among them. So the good we enjoy that was brought here by means of wicked men was done so for our benefit. That's a startling thought, but it's true. God uses wicked men to hold society together. And so maybe a very wicked man started the company that gave you a job and an income. See what I'm saying? The sinner heaps it up with travail to give it to him that's good before God. Wow. Isaiah 65. That'd be a good example right there, the one I just used about some wicked person starting some company that provided you a lucrative living as a God-fearing person, or a sufficient living. I mean, really, think about it. Think about it. Matt, remind me of the company you work for. Microsoft. Did a good God-fearing man establish Microsoft? But are you gleaning some cream from Microsoft? Well, your kids are. That's where all the cream is going.
You get some of it.
Oh, yeah, I know. See, the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. I mean,
You get some of that. So that's...
yeah. I mean, really, when you think about it. So whoever this guy was that started Microsoft, hey, he laid it up for me. Think about that. Fascinating. And so we read here in Isaiah 65:8, "Thus saith the Lord, as the new wine is found in the cluster, and one saith, destroy it not, for a blessing is in it. So will I do for my servant's sake, that I may not destroy them all. And I will bring forth a seed out of Jacob and out of Judah, an inheritor of my mountains, and mine elect shall inherit it, and my servants shall dwell there." So God spares the whole cluster of human society for the elect in it. But you know what? When the elect person is born in this world and born again by the Holy Spirit, guess what? It's over. It's over. Then look at Romans chapter 9, 22 through 23. Romans 9, 22 through 23. "So to the sinner he giveth travail, that he may heap it up, to give to him that is good before God." And then Romans chapter 9, 22 through 23. What if God, willing to show His wrath and to make His power known, endured, that is, He bears with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction? For what purpose? And that He might make known the riches of His glory on the vessels of mercy, which He had afore prepared unto glory. The only reason God is putting up with wicked people is for you, until you have found and attained the salvation that is in Christ Jesus unto eternal glory. And like I say, when the last one of God's elect has reached that end, it's over for this world. Now, when you think about a sinner working so hard, and really, this is not his objective. I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying it's God's objective, what God draws out of what He does. When you consider that He's going through all that travail to give to him that's good before God, what is that for him? Vanity and vexation of the spirit. And what is all our work for us if there's nothing beyond the sun? Vanity, vexation of the spirit. So it comes to the same in either case, depending on the perspective that you have. And that brings us to chapter 3. Can you believe it? I've done 2 chapters, and I'm not even through the 4th sermon. I'm going to chapter 3. Like I say, I'm not doing this like I did Ephesians, so I don't expect to be here for the next 5 years. And it's a lot of work, so don't be surprised if there's a Sunday I have to take a break just to get caught up. But anyway, I want to read verses 1 through 9 And I am not going to comment extensively on each and every one of these. What I'm aiming at here is the larger picture in view of what Solomon is setting forward. To everything, this was actually put to music a few years ago. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. Hugh Collins understood that well. He'd go in and he'd break things down, then he'd build them up. He'd make the biggest mess, only then to have come out of it the most beautiful work. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, as when one has some infectious communicable disease. You might want to stay away for a while to get over it. A time to get. We spend much of our life doing that, don't we? And a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to rend and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit hath he that laboureth wherein he laboureth? What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboureth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. Now, in the verses that I have just read to you, Solomon deals with the changing scenes of life. And in the verses that follow, will relate them to God's perfect providence, the changing scenes of life. Now let's define that word season. To everything there is a season, because that word time in this instance is a synonym of that word season. They mean the same thing, two words for the same thing. To everything there is a season. A season is a time, period, or occasion. A particular time or period during which something happens or which is defined by some characteristic feature or circumstance. So this word time used in these verses is defined by the very first word, season. And it refers to a period of time rather than a specific moment of time. That's what a season is. It's a period. It's a period during which something happens and is defined by some characteristic feature or circumstance. For example, in Genesis 18:10, we read of the time of life. Let me just read that verse, Genesis 18 and verse 10. Show you what I'm talking about. God says to Sarah, he says, I will certainly, Genesis 18:10, return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. In other words, Sarah was going to reach a time when she would be able to conceive and have a child. That's the time of life. Women have a period of time in which they can conceive and have children, and then they reach a period of time when they cannot anymore. Well, this was going to happen to Sarah, is that she was going to God was going to return to her according to the time of life. And then we read in Genesis 24:11 about another season, if you will. Genesis 24 and verse 11. And he made his camels to kneel down without the city by a well of water at the time of the evening, even the time that the women go out to draw water. See, this isn't an exact moment. This is just a period of time, the evening, when the women come out to draw water. That's what we're looking at, a period of time. Or you've got Genesis 38:27. Genesis 38:27. And it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. This is that period of time when a woman goes into labor. And it's not an exact split moment. It's a period of time, and for some it's longer, for some it's shorter. And I've seen that. Even my own daughter Jennifer, her first 2 labors were long. The other 3 after that, relatively short. The time varies. It's a period of time that we're talking about that can vary in length. We're not talking about an exact specific moment. Don't you wish that your time of travail was an exact split specific moment? 'Twould be easier, wouldn't it? But it's not. You see, the time of travail is a period of time varying in lengths depending. And then in 2 Samuel 11:1, 2 Samuel 11:1, this was a fact of ancient warfare. We read in 2 Samuel 11:1, and it came to pass after the year expired, at the time when kings go forth to battle. So there was this period of time when if you were going to have a war, this is when you did it, when the kings went forth to battle. All of these examples I just gave you are periods of time rather than an exact moment. See, sometimes people will go to this passage and think there is this exact, predestinated, eternally fixed moment for everything to happen. That's not what this first passage is teaching. It's talking about periods of time, seasons that vary in human experience. I mean, when a baby is conceived and gone through the gestation of 9 months, you've got the time to be born. It may come a little sooner, it may come a little later, but that's the time. And then when the bodily systems break down to the point that they can sustain life no more, that's the time to die. The days came, we read, in which David should die. The days. In other words, this could be any day now. He was in this condition of dying. So the days came that David should die. It's the time when the body is like, Solomon describes it in Ecclesiastes 12 like a pitcher broken at the fountain. And what it is the body eventually, the systems break down and the soul, which fills it like water fills a pitcher, spills out, can't contain it anymore. Just like when a car ceases to run because the systems just simply break down. That's what happens to the human body. And when that happens, that's the time to die. But you will notice in this passage that everything has its opposite. Everything is countered in reverse that we experience. But before I elaborate on that a little more, let me give you a quote by Matthew Henry on this whole passage where he's listing off all these different counteracting events. He says, Solomon illustrates that to everything there is a season, and I begin the quote, by the induction of particulars, 28 in number. If you count all these different things that he says there's a time for, it totals up to 28. 28 in number, according to the days of the moon's revolution, which is always increasing or decreasing between its full and change. Look at the moon, always increasing or decreasing. And that's exactly the picture we have here. Life is just back and forth. For every one thing, there's something to reverse it and to counter it. Time to be born, to start life in this world, and a time to die, a time to end it. Everything gets countered. Everything gets reversed. Everything we experience and accomplish in this world ends up, as I said, being countered or reversed. In other words, we live in a world of changes, and nothing just sticks and stays. For example, and he gives such an example here, we spend much of our lives building and accumulating, only then to have it dismantled and dispersed by ourselves or others. I look at my mother's little life. She and my dad accumulated so much. They had an acreage. They had a nice, large home on it. My dad had a workshop and a garage, and they had this beautiful property and accumulated so many things. And then my dad dies, and my mother starts giving away things. Giving away his tools, getting rid of the boat that they had. First one thing and then another. And then she moved up here, and she was going to move from that house, 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, into an apartment with 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, which meant she had to divest herself of possessions to be able to fit in her apartment. And then she couldn't live there anymore, and so she goes to assisted living, where she's just got 1 little bedroom, and so she divests herself of more. And then eventually she can't be sustained in her own little apartment in assisted living. She has to go into a foster home, and she divests herself of more, so that by the time she died and we went to collect her possessions, they filled 2 boxes. Time to get, time to lose, time to keep, and a time to cast away. God bless his memory. But Don Dirkshire believed that all of time was the time to keep, and everything was to be kept. So was your grandmother. I know. Pearl was like that. Whew. Always to keep. I mean, the man threw away nothing. Nothing. Yeah. It's pathetic. I'd say, Don, he had all these books to keep for posterity. Don, don't you need to find somebody that would value and take those books? Not while he was alive. He couldn't let them go. It was actually seriously, that is a psychological problem. It really is. They've even got a television show about hoarders, and it's absolutely horrifying to watch it. But he would have. He would have. He would have. It's something to see. But actually, I found out at the burial in Ohio, his father was that way. He had 3 barns stashed full of stuff. That's a hoarder. That's a problem. But you know what? I found out also that the people in the apartment building where he is loved him because he was personable and helpful. And that just does my heart so much good. And I could tell you other good things about Don. But he was like all the rest of us. He had a problem. We all do. And he was a hoarder. Yes, he did. He sure did. And he loved his word. He sure did. That counts for so much. But you see, there's a time to keep and a time to cast away. And while I'm saying that, I've got my time too. I've got so much stuff I could get rid of. But here's my plan. I'm going to do it when I retire. When I realize I can't do this job anymore, I'm going to start getting rid of stuff. But the problem is I'm probably going to be so old and broken down. I figure, oh, well, let the kids do it. I just don't have the energy to handle it. And then they have the laborious task of going through it all. But you see, that's life. That's, seriously speaking, life. Everything has its counter. We laugh one day, we weep the next. We love one day, we hate the next. It's the fashion of this world. I like the one there that says there's a time to speak and a time to keep silence. Wouldn't we all be better off if we mastered that one? For sure. Commenting from Matthew Henry, again, he's quoting James 3:6 that talks about the course of nature. And if you'll look, the Greek word that's translated course there, look in your center column reference, means a wheel or a circuit. The course of nature goes round and round. And Solomon taught us that already. How the wind circuit, the wind ends up where it starts. The water ends up where it starts. And you're going to see that in this chapter, he's going to show us that we end up where we start. In the dust. It's the wheel or circuit of nature. He said in the wheel of nature, James 3:6, sometimes one spoke is uppermost, and by the contrary. There is a constant ebbing and flowing, waxing and waning from one extreme to the other. Does the fashion of this world change? Ever did and ever will. And so when you look at that, then no wonder he asked the question, what profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? I mean, why build up if it's only going to end up broken down? Why work to accumulate if in the end you're going to have to lose it? When you think about it. So you can see why he would draw that conclusion from all of these contraries that we experience. And these reversals that he has illustrated here constitute the travail, verse 10, which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. And if you think about it, look at that list. Look at how much of our work is caused by these reversals. Look at that. A time to get, and that's the whole storage industry. You see these places that are where you just store stuff. You go rent a storage bin and store stuff there. That's a whole industry. And then a time to lose, and then a time to keep and a time to cast away. There's the whole garbage collecting industry. Casting away. You've got a time to dance. There's all the dance halls and places you can rent for a party. And then a time to weep. There's the funeral home. Time to die, there's the funeral home. I mean, just think about how much work, how much of our work arises from all of these contraries that we experience. And he's pretty well described everything that happens in life. Birth, death, work, emotions, relationships, accumulation, getting rid of. I mean, repairing, tearing up. This is life. Constant reversals, constant change. This reversal constitutes the travail. And like I say, so much work caused by this. But if we have the proper outlook, This travail exercises us. Look at what he said in verse 10. I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. That word exercise means to be employed. And again, so much of our employment arises because of all of these changes and reversals. And so if we have the proper outlook, this travail exercises us in a way to realize this world is not our resting place. Nothing down here sticks and stays forever. It all gets countered and reversed. So if we're properly exercised, we're going to draw that conclusion from it, that this world is not our resting place. But let me make this point. It's very important. These reversals that he's listing here do not necessarily imply that we have done anything specifically wrong to bring them about. They are just the effects of limited life in a perishing world. I told you people a while back, because I could see it, our church was poised to lose. And we have in this history of this church have had our times to get, and we've had our times to lose. I remember back in 1990, we had a big division. We lost literally one third of our membership in a year, with exclusions and a church division. Only then, after we moved the meeting place over here, to see our church grow to larger than it had ever been in its history. What do you call that? A time to get and a time to lose. And watching an aging congregation, I could see that the time was coming, that it's going to be for us a time to lose, and lose we are. It doesn't mean we've done anything wrong. It just means we live, like I say, in a perishing world, and we all die, and that's just going to happen. But, then comes this statement after that rather dismal outlook. Verse 11, He hath made everything beautiful in His time. You see, Solomon, amidst all his gloom, is no atheist. He knows that in amidst all of these changes and counteractions and reversals, he knows that God has an overruling plan for this world with a beginning and an end. Again, light shines through the gloom. And it says He hath made everything beautiful in His time. Throughout time and at the end of time, as God orders it, He balances and will balance the scales and right all the wrongs in perfect justice and mercy. Oh, that is so comforting to realize. He's going to make it all right. Everything beautiful in His time. Now, we wish He'd do it in ours, but He'll make it beautiful in His time. And you've got a classic example of that. You see, right now, we often only see and feel the misery and ugliness of life in the world because we don't see the whole picture, that God is making everything beautiful in His time. We trace here and there bits of the beauty coming from even the most adverse circumstances. Classic example, what happened to Joseph when he was betrayed by his brethren, sold into slavery. Look at Genesis 15 and look at something that God made beautiful in His time. I'm sure every one of us can look back at experiences in our life that at the time were, to us, we could see nothing good to come of it. But God, in His overruling providence and plan and justice, worked it out so beautifully. In Genesis 15, 19 and 20, Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? His brethren were worried that he was going to take vengeance on them because they'd sold him into slavery. And he said, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good to bring to pass as it is this day to save much people alive. Joseph, a victim of gross injustice. His brethren hated him because he was good, because his father loved him, and because God revealed to him things that would happen in the future, and they hated him for his dreams. Sold him to where he was sold into slavery, and then falsely accused by his slave owner's wife, and then made to suffer in prison. Looks real ugly, doesn't it? But God so ordered things that in time he was raised from a prison to be the prime minister of the greatest empire in the world and to become one of the most outstanding pictures and types of the Lord Jesus Christ you'd ever want to find anywhere. God made it beautiful in His time. Look at the horrible, horrible injustice heaped upon the one truly, fully innocent man in all of history, the blessed Son of God. But did not God make that beautiful in His time? Do not we see beauty in the cross of Christ, in the bloodshedding and suffering of the Son of God, so that we sing it in celebratory tones as a wonderful thing? He hath made everything beautiful in His time. And every injustice, no matter how ugly, no matter how horrible it is, come the day of judgment when it's all set right and the wicked will get their just and final due, it will be like it was with the peace offering, when God finally sacrifices the wicked, who have been those who have disturbed the peace of this universe. When they are finally consigned to their final doom, the smoke of their torment will rise up like a sweet-smelling savour in the nostrils of a just God, and shall be so to us as well. And God's universe will be thoroughly purged of everything unjust, filthy, and ugly, and made beautiful in His time. And it'll be the same universe we live in, made new. He hath made everything beautiful in His time. And He's done it throughout history. Like I say, we can trace in the experiences. For example, I worked so hard in my pastorate down south. For 7 years I devoted my youth to pastoring that church. And I served them with as much love and care and zeal and fervency as I serve you. I would spend hours walking about, praying to God, interceding for those people in that congregation. And yet they would not bend to what Scripture taught. They were steeped in their tradition, and they would not exercise biblical discipline. And I saw my ministry there just crumbling. I remember standing in front of them, I've told you this story before, and telling them in a business meeting that I felt like I had broken glass all around my feet. All those years, I felt like all that work shattered in shards, come to nothing. But you know what? God made that beautiful in His time. Because God let me have 7 years to learn how it's not supposed to be. So that by the time I came here with a determination, God help me, I would not have the kind of ministry here I had there. And while it has not been a problem-free ministry, trust me on that one, it has not been a replica of what that was. He hath made everything beautiful in His time. So in His overweening providence, He gave this young man a very thorough education in what a church should not be, to help me all the more to appreciate what it should be. He hath made everything beautiful in His time. And like I say, we trace here bits and pieces of it, but we don't get the whole picture. Again, quoting from Derek Kidner in the Message of Ecclesiastes, he said, "We are like the desperately nearsighted, inching their way along some great tapestry or fresco in the attempt to take it in. We see enough to realize something of its quality, but the grand design escapes us, for we can never stand back far enough to view it as the Creator does, whole and entire." Isn't that beautiful? You see, if we could just see it like God sees it, standing back from it in the realm of eternity, it would all look so different. But we're just down here creeping along with our narrow vision piece by piece. It's the best we can do. The best we can do. And so let me conclude this verse, and then I think we should bring it to an end. He hath made everything beautiful in His time, and also He hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from beginning to end. He's explaining why no man can find out the work that God maketh from beginning to end. And the reason is because He set the world in their heart. You see, man has a heart with a rational capacity to think and reason and draw conclusions. Man's rational capacity is centered in his heart, but it's limited by what he can perceive with his 5 senses in the world. That being the case, with this rational capacity, we can discern from the material world the existence of an eternal God of power. But that doesn't tell us how it got here. And that doesn't tell us how it's going to end. Apart from a special revelation of God, we cannot find out how this world began or how it will end. We can conclude there's a God that made it, but how He made it, how long He took to make it, and how long it's going to last, and how He's going to put an end to it, the only way we can know that is not by our rational minds and our five senses wrapped up within the boundaries of a perceptible universe, but by a special revelation that comes from beyond the sun, where God is, down through the galaxies, down into the hearts of prophets and holy men that recorded it for us and told us the beginning and the end.